Welcome to Your Soul's Therapist podcast. I'm your host, Vlada de Souza. This show is on a mission to offer you a space to understand yourself more deeply, expand your worldview, heal your heart, and elevate your energy. If you're looking for safe and grounded tools to support your healing journey, then this show is for you. I hope you enjoy today's episode. My guest today is Dr. Steve Chee. Steve is an Integrative East-West Physician, a certified IFS Therapist, and the creator of the IFS Institute's continuity program, the Sacred Nervous System. He is also the originator of the Field-Aware Soul Ecology, and he is completing his first book, The Field-Aware Soul. He works with sensitive souls, with people who were told they were too much. In this conversation, we talk about what happens to sensitive souls growing up in environments that couldn't properly meet them at the depth they needed back then, and how that turns into shame, into performing, people pleasing, into betraying yourself. We talk about why healing doesn't happen just by itself, that it actually happens in relationship. And Steve will share something very deeply touching and personal about his journey as a field-aware soul and the moment that transformed him completely when he was properly met and seen while he was already at the age of 49. I don't think it will leave you untouched. Please listen until the end and take it all in. Please welcome Dr. Steve Chee. Steve, it's a great pleasure to welcome you today to your Soul's Therapist podcast. Thank you for your time and coming here to share with us all the wisdom about the journey of sensitivity and healing.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's definitely a subject that's also very personal for me as well, and very much related to what I feel called to share and to offer others and myself included.
Beautiful. Well, probably I will go ahead and start with your journey. You know, it's so easy to talk about this terms of sensitive people, highly sensitive people, healing and things like that. But I think we all humans, and as a practitioners and therapists, I guess at some point we just end up being those simply because our journey personally led us onto this path, and our experiences that we had in our own system brought us to a place where today we are helping others to understand themselves better and understand what's happening with them. So do you mind starting a little bit with your story around sensitivity and field-aware soul that you are?
Yeah. Yeah, there's, and I really appreciate how you're contextualizing this because, so much of my own journey, the medicine that I offer is the medicine that I myself needed and have received. And this is a part of the ongoing journey. I feel that's important for those who are in healing journeys and share that because, and before I just even begin with my own story, just to name this, it's the beauty of healing work is that who gets healed is almost secondary. In offering the healing that I offer others that comes through me, there's something in me that it's always wanted or gets healed in the process. Like, when I use the word love explicitly, but love doesn't distinguish, oh, this is only for this person or only for that person. It just is and meets. So, and for me, my journey as a child, I was, I was very just, I was sensitive, and there was, it was very challenging because, and this isn't, I'm not blaming my family or my parents or anything, but I was often seen as too much, too something, too intense, too sensitive. And the challenging thing is when myself wasn't met, it's not that the capacity to become who we are, who I was meant to be. What happens is it gets buried. And so, for example, as a child, one of the things that, and I would do this alone, which speaks to the relational field of my family and the dynamics and the world in which my family was also in as well. I would play alone. And what I played with alone that I loved doing was I would imagine I was sticking my hands into the earth, and I would discover long lost dinosaur eggs, and I was finding them, and I was loving them, and they would hatch, and then I would nurture them, and there was this reciprocal. I was loving them, they were loving me back. And it was so, it's heartbreaking, honestly. I am aware of that tenderness of doing that. As a child, I'm creating a world that I myself needed for my own sensitivity, my own tenderness. And because it wasn't met, my system created a way of finding and exploring that and expressing that. And to me, the journey between that, what I would do as a young child, to who and what I am now, is everything in terms of regaining. To me, this is very much the work that I offer and want to talk about, is that capacity was and can be met relationally so that I can become who I am today. There's a gap. There was a gap in the field of my experience that needed to be met relationally. It was bigger than me. It was outside of me. And to me, that's speaking to that explicitly, I feel like, is important, because otherwise this gift was not seen as a gift for the longest time. I mean, really, I didn't even think it was a gift. And I think that's often what happens, is shame, grief, trauma bury the things that actually has our greatest gift within it. And it's not even in our awareness until it is met outside of us in a way that can help that to develop.
It is really interesting to hear you saying how, as a sensitive soul, when you were very young and there were no one to meet you on that level, that you were creating that world that you need for yourself. It's very empowering to see that our system is trying to help us, right? And we'll be creating whatever the need is, and the system will be trying to meet its own need itself. But
Yes.
obviously, maybe it's not necessarily enough. And I'm just, for maybe to
Yes.
listeners to really have a sense of the experience of being a field-aware soul. How would you describe this? Is it a phenomena? Is it, is it a quality of our being? What is a field-aware soul from your experience, from your perspective?
Yeah. I mean, to me, and that's just a terminology that I'm using. It's, the way that I would describe it is, and this is somewhat based in, I mean, it's inspired by Chinese metaphysics. The there's a in Chinese metaphysics, they call them hidden stems. What it means is that there's capacities within us that can only develop in relationship, and they're hidden. And to me, this is now my explicit kind of way that I name this, is that there are those who their capacity is more sensitive or more aware of what is between. So when I mean between, it's just in the relational field, they sense the pulse of a room. They sense the field of the earth. They feel a kinship to things unseen. To me, it's not a better than or worse than. And there, in ecology, in our world, nature reveals this to us. Areas between are the most fertile for growth, for generativity. Like the area between a river and the ocean, or a forest and a river, or it's called an ecotone. They're the most generative areas where life evolves most alive. It is also the most fragile. Like coral reefs are an area they're being damaged because they're so sensitive, yet there's so much life that occurs at a coral reef, for example. And so my part of what I'm saying is that there are those who are more inherently, it's not better than, they're just more naturally aware of the relational field, and they have a role to play in it, and they're the most likely to be harmed by what's happening in our world. It's like the canary in the coal mine, where they're it's almost like the coal. They think that something's wrong with the canary, but the world is not supporting those who are naturally more sensitive. And so, and there's gets named all kinds of things: empaths, HSPs, neurodivergence, and those are all useful. Those are all useful terms to understand. The thing that I'm wanting to emphasize is a bit more on the ecological, developmental, relational dynamics, because those terms can sometimes leave it as an individual problem. It's like a fish out of water, and they wonder why they describe the fish like choking and grasping, like can't breathe. And it's like, oh, the fish has a problem, but they don't realize we're not naming what is the relational field that allows the fish to be a fish. Not that fish are the most important things in the world. They're not, but they belong to, is my point. And that's kind of what I'm naming those who are very field aware, is because they often bury that they're a fish. They think they're not a fish. They try to be something other than a fish.
If you would try to describe maybe a case,
Yeah.
someone you worked with, obviously without, sharing the personal details, but, for us that forgot it, or for those of us who, I just think about myself. For a very big chunk of time, I thought myself to be someone else, and I deep down inside of me knew that this is not who I am, but just I don't know. I had to believe what others were telling me or how the world was working, around me. So if you would try to share with us kind of a case of a person that in fact is field aware, and then due to certain circumstances, the way they were raised, the environment, experiences, education, and things like that, how did they lose the touch with the fact that they're
Yes.
fish? And then how do you then, like you said, buried, how do you unbury this
Yes.
unique quality? I just want to pause here for a moment and let you know that if you feel called to go deeper on your healing journey and you need someone safe, someone who can truly support you, I'd love to invite you to explore my signature program, Untangle, or my one-to-one retreats and private healing work. You will find all the details in the show notes or on my website, vladadesouza.com. Don't be shy. You're always welcome to connect with me in person through a complimentary call. And now, back to the episode.
So I'll use myself. I mean, this is because I will be able to speak in the most depth. But the same version of this dynamic occurs with my clients and those that I both have worked with and work with. So I grew up, and for the longest time, I'm just pausing because it's sensitive, and I also so I, as a child, for the longest time and as an adult, I didn't realize why I kept saying to my family, "Don't touch me." And as an adult, I did not. That used to be the primary memory of my childhood. It was just screaming, "Don't touch me." And my sensitivity obviously wasn't being met, right? A child doesn't scream, "Don't touch me" for a reason. There's something why a child is saying that. So, and at the same time too, I also know developmentally, my sister, who was my emotional attachment figure, who's 12 years older than me, she left when I was 6. So this person I was most emotionally bonded to left. And this is not, again, to blame her for leaving. It's also had an impact on me. And I couldn't talk to her when she left. I couldn't say goodbye. I mean, I can feel the emotion in naming that. And also, as a child, again, it's a sensitivity thing. My baby blanket, they actually took it from me. They took it from me, and it wasn't under my consent, and it got taken and destroyed. I name this because this capacity to meet the world begins with our way in which we love something, begins with a blanket, a stuffed animal, a toy. Why I'm talking about play, there's a physician, a pediatrician, and psychoanalyst, Winnicott. He talks about this, the transitional object, and how the self emerges through play. And for me, I buried it when a child. So I name all these developmental traumas. I had to bury all of that because I learned if I love something, a person, a blanket, they leave. It gets taken. It gets destroyed. I mean, it's heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking to name this. I am naming it. It was not heartbreaking for me for the longest time because I had just forgotten. I had forgotten all of it because that's how I survived. So how did I begin to remember? I was at a training for the relational intelligence model, which is this IFS attachment theory, polyvagal theory model. And there was something happening in the group where there were people that were having a challenge in the group. And so the leader of the group, Francois, said, we had a meeting and he wanted to ask how the training was going. The impact, and I was having my own challenges as well, but the field being challenged with feeling that they belong impacted me so deeply. Technically this is called secondary trauma, where there's my trauma, my developmental trauma. There's the trauma in the field of those that I love and care for, and how that in addition is impacting me. So I'm naming that because that happened to me as a child. And this is also actually, honestly, one of the things that started to open the door relationally was in this group. So in this group, and it was somatic, deep in my body. As I started to name what was happening to me, I didn't know how others were doing. I didn't know if the group was meeting them, and it impacted me very deeply. So I was naming this to Francois. And I could feel, just there was so much fear, rage, anger, everything. It's just pure emotion. And he was not afraid. It was honestly the first time in my life where this pureness of being in me was met relationally outside of me by somebody else. I could see it in his eyes. I could hear it in his voice. He was not afraid of what I was naming. That changed
Mm,
something so deep. I didn't even know I was wanting that.
mm,
It was so gone. And then it began to unravel something. I didn't have words for, but I could only feel in my body about wanting to be met relationally. And I started to see how much I had been performing to be something, someone other than who I was, so that I could belong. And so that moment is what changed everything. And so to me, this is why I said when in the beginning, we need others to meet us when we have forgotten.
So he unlocked you inside of you under all
Yes.
those layers of performance and other stuff. And what was actually he doing or not doing that offered you that unbelievable experience of being so deeply and profoundly met?
Yeah, this is such a good question. What he wasn't doing was everything. So much of the time, I could hear it. This is why I call it field aware. I can hear it. I could hear it in another voice. I'm like, oh, they're not getting me. Oh, I'm too much. Oh, something. I'm sensing something in the other. Oh, I just said something and they just, and it may not even be verbal. It's just something in my body doesn't, it guards or dissociates or something. What he did was he moved in his own presence. This is how I experienced it. He moved towards me, but not against me. He moved and was open, yet also there. He spoke and wasn't, he was clear, but also I could tell he was also with me. He was guiding and not guiding in a sense of telling me how I needed to be. It's Tim Winnicott, I name him again. He says that therapy is play between the therapist and the client, where the client is starting to play again, meeting something on the inside and outside. And the therapist is also playing. These are not his words, these are my words for the kind of experience where there's a meeting that both feel changed by the encounter because something new, something is emerging. And to me, this is the most sacred thing that happens in those who do work like this. And both are touched and changed by what I would name it as love, something that's ineffable. And so that's what I would say. Those are my words for what I would say. And I think there are other words for it. Polyvagal has its own words. Attachment theory has its own words. IFS has its own words. These are my words for it.
That's right. And it also feels, as you're talking, that he was a field-aware soul too, right? Because it feels like a field-aware soul definitely sees another one. And it's just in that moment, everything is just happening intuitively. It's just beyond beyond the script, beyond the protocol. It's just happening so naturally, soul to soul, being to being.
Yes, exactly. And that's like the fish in the water. And it's just, oh, I sense something. Yes, then you're just exploring and being. And something, even that which is the most whatever, can still be met in relationship.
How old were you when that happened?
I was 49.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is decades of my life this is also after years of, I mean, I've been in and out of therapy for decades, since my mid 20s or something. There had never been something this
Profound
this profound,
recognition. Hmm.
because it hasn't been named. That's my point, is the relational field hadn't been named as something where this was needed to meet.
When I'm looking at kids, I see all of them as very vulnerable, field aware beings. Maybe some of us have a little bit different design, but I noticed that for kids, for young humans, when they are not met in the way they need it is a traumatic experience. And in my words, it feels like you're driving a car 200 kilometers per hour in a wall. That's my experience of not being met,
Yes.
not being seen, not being connected to, not being related to on a different level, beyond like what are you gonna eat for breakfast and did you do your homework and this kind of thing,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I feel like we're doing podcasts for parents.
Well, I mean, it is for parents, but it's for anybody really whose nature, because to me, what you just named, 200 kilometers into a wall. So the intensity of that. So my curiosity starts going towards, because this is based on my own experience. That means there's 0 to 200. There's all the gradient that you're aware of between. There's all the speed that your system is detecting. And then there's not only that, there's a wall, meaning outside of you, the way in which it is met, the abruptness. To me, one of the biggest things that I see in those who are very field aware is there hasn't been a space to be with all of the facets of that, because there are so many facets of awareness that hadn't got the chance often to be met. I'm not saying this is necessarily your experience. I'm just saying, if I was working with someone exploring this, that there is like, what's in there? What if you were given the space first to be met? What's actually there? What are you sensing in all the different relational fields? Familial, cultural, ancestral, land, earth, angels, guides, sky, universe, whatever you want, all these different levels of relationship. Because to me, that's actually what happens, is that's all there that may have been compressed into one moment of feeling like you hit the wall.
That's right. It's very interesting. the capacity and the space and the amount that one human or one sensitive child carries is so huge, right? And very often, when parents look at their kids, they just see a kid that just needs to eat, to sleep, and to play. And that awareness, right? The experience on the inside, what, like, you, everything that you named, all this awareness around everything that is happening in the room with people, in their relationship, and the ancestors, and you reading, you're reading not only what's in front of you, you're reading everything, and you're
Yes.
swimming in this field. And
Yes.
when parents look at you, what they see is a baby that just, has very primitive needs, and you just need to meet those needs, and supposedly everything is okay, right?
Yes.
And you tell me what happens when young sensitive souls are met in that way, in this kind of very primitive way, I would say.
And not having their needs met.
Mm.
Is that what you, yes. So to me, so this is where it's not there's no judgment and this is not good or bad, in the sense of what happens, it's survival. So what's particularly challenging about developmental trauma is when a system gets overwhelmed or when the caregiver or the field is the potential source of threat, the system has to bury it. The burying is survival. This is polyvagal theory. This is the dissociative system. It will do this. Now, to me, what happens is the capacity we started talking about earlier is the system will find a way to express it. It will. It will find a way to express it. And it might be, like I was saying, playing alone until even that potentially, if unless it's met or cultivated or met relationally to develop. And sometimes what happens is it gets buried and then the body remembers, the body is holding this. This to me is a huge piece where there's really a very massive gap between the body feeling held and met, and then the system either performing is they perform into the world. They perform into the system for belonging. They may idealize relationship dynamics because seeing it truly for what it is just too painful. It's too painful to realize that the source of care might have actually also been not enough or worse, the source of pain, of wounding. This is incredibly hard for a child, an adult, a human to try to wrap around. And then the system also can just simply deny. Denial becomes a way in which the system adapts, because if it can't see what it is, because it is protecting against the pain that needs to be met. So until there are relational fields to hold it, it can't really, it's hard, it's almost impossible to emerge.
You're so right. And the burying as a coping strategy, the denying and avoiding as a coping strategy. I think in so many ways, this is the beginning of the journey. When people coming to, to therapy or trying to heal because they know something's off, something's not working. Usually that's the first layers that you start with. And it's a very tender, very sensitive process of starting there, or what we would say in IFS with our protectors, right? And some protectors, in my experience, the more sensitive, the tougher the protectors are. It's like
Yes.
every time I meet very, very tough protector, I know that the level of sensitivity there can be super high, super,
Yes.
super high.
Yes, exactly. Well, and that's a beautiful way of describing your own wisdom of what you've you have known through your own experience. And so then you can hold, then now you can hold that, is how I'm hearing it, with others, you
Yeah.
know, to me, I'm not disagreeing with you. I agree very much. The denial thing is very much a facet. It's very present in the beginning. There's Winnicott again talks about a false self, the performing, that needs to occur. The self, part of the reason why I feel like this is important to name is it's different than how the self is named through IFS. And to me, it's useful to have other ways of seeing where and what is the self. Winnicott says the self emerges through it's through the potential space of the inner and the outer through play. So that's where the self emerges. The false self performs because the real self, true self, couldn't be met relationally. So to me, what I sense internally around this is that there's almost a false world dynamic that gets created. Denying, idealizing, performing. These are strategies that, depending on the system in any given time, can reemerge. And in fact, in my experience personally, like even in today, in my own relational practices that I do, ran into denial or ran into it again. And it's not that that's the problem. It's that it reminds of the old ways in which a deeper meeting is longing to be met. The reason why I'm naming it was I was in the dream, I was seeing something related to this, how these different facets, these different parts, these different relational dynamics can involute on themselves to protect the system, protect that which is most sensitive.
Right. Yeah. And I'm really curious to understand a little bit better about sensitivity. Sometimes developing sensitivity is necessary when the environment is unpredictable. For example, we really need to read it. We really need to kind of develop the skill of tuning into others, tuning into space, sense checking, scanning if it's safe. So that kind of a skill of being super sensitive comes from the need to cope with unpredictable or uncontrollable environment. And others kind of just come out of the womb and they read, they just sense, they read, they experience everything. Everything is going through them, running through them. Where do you see this playing out? Is it two different categories? Are they intersect? How would you define the sensitivity as a gift, as a strategy, coping strategy?
Yeah, so you're speaking kind of to the difference between, is this trauma-induced sensitivity versus relational capacity or a gift? Is
That's
that kind of
right.
what you're naming?
That's right.
Yeah, this is, so to me, this starts becoming, again, kind of going back to the dynamic. Even so, trauma is a relational field dynamic. It's both. It affects an individual and it's a field dynamic. So when somebody is, in effect, it affects everybody. It just at varying degrees of sensitivity and awareness. So there's so many layers of this, because a part of the wounding that can occur for those who are very sensitive or field aware, the too much label. So that's a part of it, or this is your trauma. This starts to isolate the person from the very relational need that would help it, and also the relational potential trauma that occurred to enforce it. So, for example, myself, it's like when I was told I was too much, there's the wounding that occurred to me, but there's also then the lack of the meeting that my system needed because I was aware of other things. So this then compounds the wound. And if we only use approaches therapies that are purely intrapsychic, meaning we only go inside with ourselves, we can end up reinforcing an isolating dynamic that it's kind of like you need to go to your room and be alone with this. You're too much, as opposed to it being met relationally and being met that I see you and you're not too much for me and I can be with you. And not only are you not too much, what are you aware of? Let me be with you to help you see what you're sensing. This then starts speaking to so many other layers that are actually relational between oneself and another, and not just intrapsychic with their own parts. I'm not saying that parts aren't burdened, and that they aren't a part of it. I'm saying that there's also more, because part of what can happen in this whole backlash thing that can happen with IFS and parts, I believe, is actually a piece of what's happening in the relational field. Are they being seen and met? Are they able to develop the capacity that led to the system needing to fragment into parts? What's before that needed to be met relationally? Because polyvagal theory, attachment theory reveals this to us. Co-regulation, the being met by another precedes self-regulation, the capacity to be with it inside of ourselves. That means it needs to be met relationally by another in a way before we can internalize it.
You know, when you're saying too much, I think you're speaking for so many people that just, were themselves, were doing, them, being them effortlessly, naturally, organically, spontaneously,
Yes.
authentically. And then
Yes.
the label "you're too much," to me, it's soul killer. It's a burden of shame. It's a burden of inadequacy. That's what it all kind of drops
Yes.
into, right? So
Yes.
I know that you're meeting right now with what you're sharing a lot of people that had this experience and maybe still having. I definitely still have that experience. My name is Vlada too much. Da 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 da.
And I'm
It's
Steve too much too, blah, 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 blah.
we're
I really hear
family,
you. Yes.
cousins. And yeah, we do have all these cousins around the world that, they were told they're too much, or I think even worse, when they were made feel they are too much.
Yes.
Not even explicitly like, oh, you're too much. But like when someone is giving you a look or a sense or a response like can you be a bit like, less, or, can
Exactly.
you slow yourself down, or and that is what you said, like 200 kilometers per hour into the wall. Which message do you want to share with people that had this profound experience and maybe led them to feel inadequate at the end of the day?
Yeah, I mean, the first message is you are not too much. You were
Yay!
too, really what it is you have been too aware. You've been too alone with what you have been naming and experiencing, is what I would say. There's too much that you've been aware of that has not yet been met relationally by another, that can meet you in a way that can help you to become you, in a way that is not, that just can be held in a way that's in a reciprocal relational dynamic with another. I mean, to me, this is really what's often, the other thing I would want to say is this: too often what they are seeing is something that the field is uncomfortable with. They're sensing something. So you mentioned shame. So shame is another dynamic. It's a field dynamic. It's individual, but shame is in the room. You can feel it, even if you weren't directly the one that experienced it, like, "Oh, ooh," like, you can s it and it's like it infects everything, and it gets over everybody, and then the room collapses, and people stop being authentic and real, and there's so and then the individual, if they're a child or they're young or they're sensitive or whatever, they burden themselves. "I am the one. I'm bad. I did something wrong." And so then but to me, so often, and these are the people that I often am working with, they're seeing things in the relational field that others did not want to see. They did not want to name. They did not want to feel. They did not want to experience. And their truth couldn't be met. To me, this is why people who are very field aware, it's so important that they can feel that they belong, because they're often seeing, sensing, and aware of things that other people don't want to see, name, or feel, because they are scared and they don't want to name that they're scared.
I just want to give you Oscar for saying all of this.
Is there a movie that this is in it?
Maybe we should make a movie. I mean, maybe you write a book first and that will be a script, and then just give it to someone in Hollywood, and, I hope they will make a movie out of it, with a name You're Not Too Much. Um, but, as you're talking, I'm thinking, you're 100% right. And there might be one person in this people's life that one day will meet them, will not give them a weird look, or will not give them a feeling, what's wrong with you? Why you're like
Yes.
this? We'll just be open to them. We'll be accepting of them. We'll be welcoming them.
Yes.
And then, like you said, and especially when you get, when you got really in touch with your emotions and your experience and your feelings, it becomes an experience that you cannot, forget. It touches you deeply. It unlocks those parts of you that were never met. Finally, they are met. It's a really big moment. And usually, yeah, usually from what I see, it happens in the right setting, in a therapeutic kind of setting, or on a retreat, or, on this
Yeah.
kind of environments. And so maybe you're 40, maybe you're 50, maybe you're 60, I don't know, 20, and someone for the first time just welcomes you, welcomes all of you with love and compassion and curiosity. And then you have that moment inside of you that, okay, I'm okay. Someone can welcome me, someone can tolerate me, but then they go back into this world. And again, they might feel stuck in this dynamic of
Yes.
judgment, criticism, ridicule, comparison, competition, all these things. And any advice for people that, maybe their therapist gives them that experience, but then they need to be in this intense world where there's not much
Yes.
of meeting.
Yeah, no, you're speaking to something that's so needed. To me, this is why I talk about it in a developmental terms, because it's why I kind of named earlier, they're performing, the idealizing, and the denying. And in my own journey, it's a very painful experience, and also liberating, to start to see, like, oh, I've been performing. I've been just trying to be somebody. I've been trying to do whatever right, or I've been idealizing this relationship, this person, and I'm not actually being seen, and I've been tolerating it, and I haven't been able to name that, and I'm seeing it now, and I've been in denial about, I actually want, but I'm afraid to name that I want relationships where I could be seen, like a taste of that. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, I've been surviving on drops of water. I'm a fish. I can swim. It is so important that we find relational fields. Those are very field aware, it's more important for them to find relational fields that they feel that they belong to. and to keep returning and not keep. It's not that they can't have relationships with people who are less sensitive. They don't seek that their belonging is going to come from them. It's not that we don't love them. We do, but this is the capacity. Can I be me and not lose myself in relationship? That is one of the hardest things, or they're not aware of it. So the journey for me, from my perspective, becomes becoming aware of it first, so that then they can start cultivating and being found in relationships with a therapist, with a friend, with a tree, with a river, with a guide, a spiritual guide, within with the stars, with some place, with an animal, where they can start to feel this sense of being met, and from there exploring who they are, and not the other way around. This is otherwise it's just really painful.
It's so true, and the word painful is so spot on. And I just want to share that for me, my first experience was offered by a dog that I found and I adopted. And that being just gave me that feeling, I'm here, and you're all welcome, and I just love you the way you are. And it's surreal to experience that from an animal that just is so there. And I think many people that have dogs can relate to this.
Yes, of course.
They just feel
Yes.
you. And Steve, when it comes to self-care, I get it, like we need to go and try and find our tribe and our community where we belong. And when there are other souls that are aware and sensitive and can see, sense, feel you and welcome you, it's a gift if we do find that. And for so many people, especially living in brutal, concrete jungles of big cities, it might be a real challenge. And if you would have an advice, how can we do a little bit of a self-care? How can we help ourselves sometimes to meet ourselves instead of,
Yes.
perpetuating this feeling of I'm don't belong, I'm not enough, I'm, different or something's wrong with me. How can we meet ourselves?
Yes. And to me, the just referencing my own story that I named in the beginning, about there's a way in which your soul wants to play and find itself. Like for me, what I did alone as a child is, this to me becomes a way in which there's some ways that you knew before thought had to think, before concepts had to become a strategy of how you were going to make it work, before anything. There are ways that are just inherently you when you were free to be and play. To me, the seed of that is there. And it might even be something you're not even explicitly aware of. I'm drawn to X, Y, or Z. Could be art, could be singing, could be whatever. To me, these little threads, it's the thread that there's something. There's a beautiful poem from the line of poetry from Rumi. What you seek is seeking you. To me, there's something inside of us. To me, there's a creating of a space to begin to explore that, to deepen into that. And it wants to find you. It does, even in the concrete jungle. It does. I just believe that inside of my own heart, because there was something inside of me that I thought I had completely lost, but it was only buried. It was only buried in the safest place it could ever be. And so it needs to be tended to. And so it's like, to me, that's where it becomes an exploration. Can you give yourself permission to explore again what that actually is, and let yourself be guided by that which is seeking you too, is what I would say to people.
And if we imagine someone has a day off Saturday off and they're listening to this podcast and they're like, okay, so what should I do? Should I go for a walk by myself? Should I meditate? Should I put some music on and dance? What do you do, Steve?
For me, the greatest place that I have found my sense of a greater connection to a we has been through my dreams personally. The meeting of that's a huge place of meeting, which I can talk more about. I also I've been doing more of it recently, but ecstatic dance has been another place of meeting that I just find myself very free to be me. I do, there's things like that. But to me, it's a place where there's some between, is what I would say. There's a between, something between myself and something else that I can explore, like me and between my dream that I have, meeting the dream as a presence, not trying to analyze it. The dream itself as a relational presence has been infinitely, I can feel it in my heart just naming it, just drawing me into something much bigger than me always. And it's not in my control, yet it's alive in its own way, and it connects me to everything else. And, in movement, like with ecstatic dance or whatever, it's like there's the music and there's me, and then there's this freedom. And then there's also the pain, whatever. Can I meet it? Can I meet what's happening between me and the music and my body and letting it come forward? To me, this happens with art, singing, whatever. This is anything where people can find, it could be walking, could be nature, could be anything. It could be any and all of the things. What matters most is the quality of being that somebody gives themselves with it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Steve, I was, asking questions that I'm really, really interested in, but I want to give you a little bit of space to share anything else what we didn't speak about, what we didn't name around the topic of field-aware souls, anything that you feel you really want other people to hear.
To me, at the heart of this, it's the capacity to love something underneath all of these things. So, we perform. This is even relates to the dream that I had last night and the parts of me that felt like they need to perform. Needing to be seen as someone special, for example. Underneath it is a longing to just be seen.
Be met.
And be met without needing to perform, to love and be loved. And to me, this is at the heart of it, is at the heart of all of it. Can we let ourselves love what we love and let it love us back? It's like Mary Oliver, this poem about wild geese. You don't have to walk through the desert, repenting. You just have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. And to me, this is the message, because when we do that, then what we create, what we, like I'm writing this book, The Field-Aware Soul, I'm letting that what I love be the thing that then guides me into the world, because that's what our world needs, is people who love and can let something love them back, and then they keep loving back. It's reciprocal. And then we start offering things. I never would have imagined I would be doing what I'm doing. There's no question. There's no question what has emerged was never on my radar until after this moment of being met that I named earlier in this conversation. And so that's my offering for people is, can you let yourself become that who you're meant to be?
So being met is probably is the true expression of love.
Yes. Meeting and being met, both. The capacity, right? And you were naming it too, how you meet people, like the protectors and such. You were naming. To me, I would call that love. I don't know what you would call that. Curious. Yeah, that's it's both. It's the paradox and mystery of love, right?
So
When we
interesting.
can,
I was just recently doing a training, and the lead trainer asked, "So what do you guys think therapy actually is?" And everyone, it's this, it's this, and she's like, and then it's really love. It's really love. It's really being there for another and just meeting them fully. And then I was reflecting, um, what actually happens in the sessions in this exchange, and all I could use one word. I called it love.
yes,
And love
yes.
heals, like I think it's Frank Anderson says, love heals trauma, trauma heals through love, something like that.
Mm,
It's at the end, the love that changes everything.
yes, exactly. And to me, those who are very field aware, there's expressions of love that their world may not have. Well, maybe I'll share this as a way of final thoughts. I wrote a myth. It was for me, and if it helps others, um, the myth of the field aware soul. Sometimes a field aware soul is born into a world that doesn't know how, that doesn't recognize their light, how they sense the unseen. So they begin to dream what their world could not hold until they are seen. And in being seen, they see that the journey is to belong to a world that can, to become the dream that their soul has been dreaming through them, with them, and as them. And in so doing, love what the world could not bear to name. And so to me, there's a form of love that those are very field aware. It might feel too much, too grandiose, too idealistic, too whatever. And to me, the journey is to become the dream. That's the journey, and offer that love, because there is something that's at the heart of it that is theirs to offer our world. And then together we can become who we were meant to be as humans who are on this beloved earth, and not destroying it and destroying each other.
So it's a journey, a path of full self-actualization on some level, right?
Yes.
And I feel like this conversation all this time has been kind of building a bridge, um, from artificial world, from artificial existence, artificial life, to a full capacity of living and being as a free spirit, as a free soul. And I would just add from myself, and I believe really every soul is very field aware
Yes.
at the end
Yes,
of
I
the
agree.
day. And what you're saying, this whole journey, when one person experiences that, they transform. And by transforming themselves, they make their contribution to the whole global change, right? The whole global transformation. I think this is happening. Do you think this
Yes.
is really, really happening right now in the world? That's
I feel like it's it's happening, and there's obviously more needed. I mean, like I didn't know you, and yet here we are, connecting very, very deeply in a way that's this. There's no question that this is people. There's a hunger, for this, for the realness of this, and I just so appreciate the way you're naming. It's true. I agree. A fullness of meeting that's not afraid of who we are. It's not afraid to meet and be met, right? And that's the wound. That's the very wound for those who are very sensitive, because when they can meet and be met and meet others, then there's a gift. I feel like it's those who are sensitive can end up meeting things, if they're healthy and connected, in ways that others may not. They may not think of meeting, but the range of capacity, that 0 to 200 mile per hour thing we're naming, that capacity of range, that means there's an attunement capacity. I know what 190 is versus 170 versus 140. There's a range there that could be met in meeting others that can help become bridges for things that people never thought could be a bridge.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hope the work that you do and the book that you are working on will, you know, put more bricks on that bridge and make it stronger. And hopefully, because this conversation definitely touched so deeply so many parts of me, honestly. And I really, really know that it touched many people's parts as those that were listening. Definitely, definitely. It's such a human journey, such a human experience of being sensitive and then shut down and then feeling shame and inadequacy and then hopefully having the experience of being mad for real for the first time and experiencing that love. So I just want to thank you for bringing the topic, framing it in such a beautiful way, and for sharing your personal experience in this. Um, and I hope this message reaches as many people as possible. So I just want to thank you for your work.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. And thank you for this rich and alive conversation, the way that we've kind of explored this. We've danced through this topic. I've very much enjoyed the permission, the space, your capacity to just be with it and explore this. And I agree. What comes up in me is just to bless this and bless those, bless our world, just with love, for nothing else.
That's right. Steve, is there any upcoming events, things that you have going on? Do you want to direct listeners to any places?
The biggest thing is my book that I'm writing, The Field-Aware Soul. There are other things in the works, we'll put it that way. That I would say is, but yeah. And if people are interested, yes, they can just go to my website, drstevechee.com, drstevechee.com, and can sign up and subscribe.
That's right. Yes. Your website will be in the show notes. And also, I will say you have some good content on YouTube channel, some meditation, some stuff you're sharing. So I will just also let people know to go there and explore some of your work and teachings and experiences there. And hopefully, I will catch you when you will be launching your book, and we will properly give it a shout out.
Thank you. I would love that.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If you feel called to deepen this journey, you'll find everything you need in the show notes, including a link to a book complimentary call with me and more details about my work and today's guest. May you continue walk your path with clarity, courage, and self-led grace. Until soon.